And Rob, I wonder what these regional mayors will do, because they're quite a powerful force now in British politics. They've really cleaned up at these elections. They've watched Andy Burnham kind of become the poster boy for, the King of the North and all of that sort of stuff. Do you think these regional mayors could cause quite a lot of trouble? Will they be a powerful new caucus in British politics for Labour?
Yeah, I expect so. And I was actually an early supporter of this kind of city region model of devolution for precisely this reason. My expectation was ambitious big hitters would go for these roles, and these roles would create a platform for big ambitious politicians to essentially argue for the thing that is most needed, in my view, in British politics, which is to wrestle more money and control away from Whitehall. We still have the most fiscally centralized polity in Western Europe, Western world, in many respects in policy formulation too. And that's already started to happen. I mean, I'm speaking to you from Greater Manchester, where we've seen a number of cycles already of this kind of ratchet effect of devolution, which we saw also with Scotland and Wales. And I think when you've got a big caucus of Labour mayors who are seen as big voices within the party, they'll be like governors are within the Democratic Party in some respects. What they're doing will be watched, what they're saying will be watched, what they're asking for will be watched, and there'll be a lot of pressure in the centre to offer that kind of stuff, not least because that's something Labour have said they want to be ambitious on in the coming Parliament as well. I think the risk with that, though, which still isn't being discussed so much, is this piecemeal model is also going to come under a lot of pressure, because you've got a situation now where half of England has a city region mayor and half of it doesn't. And some of the parts that are left maybe have a logical unit for devolution and some don't. But some places are already poor relations in this regard. And if the city region mayors prove to be an effective caucus, they'll become even poorer relations. And the lack of any kind of coherent overall logic to the process will start to become, I fear, rather more obvious, and may well become a source of considerable discontent for example, MPs who represent areas that don't have a city region mayor. They're going to feel pretty left out in that process. So I think they will be, but I think that brings its own tensions, not just between Westminster and the mayors, but also between the mayors and the places that don't have mayors.
So that's a really interesting point, because of course everywhere in the country can have a mayor if they want it, but you've got quite a lot of councils, particularly Tory councils in the south, that have been quite resistant to the idea of losing some of their power and bringing in a mayor. And you can see them sort of coming under more and more pressure to do that, which is kind of a good thing in a way. But you may get to a point where a Labour government have to say, actually, we're just going to impose them on every part of the country, because they've become such an important part of our governance model. And then you do really have a kind of regional level of British government that we've never had before. And you start to get into questions like, do you need a way for those people to come together and be represented? Do those people need to be in the Lords? You start to get into those kinds of questions, Aisha, that you considered with Gordon Brown in his sort of report on constitutional reform. So it is a really important development. We can sort of talk about what all this means for Westminster, but the mayors becoming these key figures does really matter for British politics.
I mean, they have huge personal mandates too. I mean, obviously, when you're a psephologist, you're always talking about votes. Everything is a nail in that respect. But Andy Street was the Conservative politician with the largest direct personal mandate in the country. Once we have mayoral elections happening under a Labour government, there'll probably be a number of Conservative breakthroughs like that in other places, just as there was in Tees Valley. So they can wield a big stick in that regard, and it's been very noticeable with Burnham in particular, but also with the London mayors, to some extent with some of the other new ones as well. They can go on the national media very easily in a way that nobody. I mean, I agree with you. I grew up in Surrey, so I know what you mean about that kind of part of the world. But they're going to start saying, well, we can't get on the Today programme, we can't get on the PM programme to make the case for our area. Well, we need somebody who can.